Hello everyone, my name is Gus Oliveira, and I would like to thank all of you present in this event today. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about food safety, or rather about food safety management systems. Consumers are increasingly concerned about consuming foods that do not compromise their health. To satisfy this concern, many companies in the food production sector are seeking to implement management systems that ensure food safety. Today, many countries have legislation in effect in this area, but the introduction of ISO 22000 allowed these companies to go even further. The issue of food safety has been around for a long time. I believe many of you already heard of HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. This methodology began to be developed all the way back in 1959. At the time, the objective was to avoid diseases resulting from the consumption of foods that were contaminated with airborne contaminants. Since then, it has evolved considerably, and today it's part of the daily routines of many companies operating in the food production chain. So, getting into the conceptual part of the title, food safety is directly linked to the occurrence of hazards that are associated with food at the time of consumption. The consequences of eating contaminated food can be serious, and for this reason, the ISO food safety management standards help organizations to identify and control safety risks that could adversely affect the health of consumers. Many food products are consumed in countries other than the one in which they were produced at. Consequently, international standards or norms are needed to ensure food safety on a global level. This way, all stakeholders will have guidelines and can follow the same operational framework. Food safety management systems are defined with the aim of controlling the food production process. They rely on prevention to avoid the occurrence of problems. With this type of system, points or stages are identified where hazards may occur, and measures are applied to ensure the efficient control over the process. ISO 22000 is an internationally accepted standard for the implementation of food safety management systems. This standard can be applied in any organization associated with the food production chain, even those indirectly involved. It's also important to clarify that companies can apply for ISO 22000 certification the same way it occurs with ISO 9000, for example, which is a more general quality management system and therefore better known in the market. With ISO 22000, companies can look to increase customer satisfaction, improve their image to the market, reach new markets, reduce operating costs, and improve performance of operations as a whole. It is just one more way to practice continuous improvement. So, this is a short introduction to ISO 22000. So here's the agenda for this presentation with the topics that will be covered. We're going to talk a little bit about ISO as an organization and also about the standards of the ISO 22000 family. We're also going to talk about the application fields and the main advantages of this standard. This presentation will also address the requirements of the standards, including the 7 principles of HACCP. Those of you who already know HACCP methodology will be able to easily identify where they were included in the standard. Well, everyone, let's talk a little bit about ISO. The entity is an international standardization body made up of members from approximately 160 countries. It's headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, and it's responsible for standards applied in various areas. The ISO 9000 standard, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the most commonly known ISO standards. Today, more than 1 million companies have quality management systems certified under ISO 9000. The work to prepare the standard is usually carried out by the ISO technical committees. In the case of ISO 22000, the technical committee responsible is ISO TC 34. This committee is also responsible for reviewing the standard when it deems necessary. The market changes constantly, and over time, this requires that the standards change as well. The technical committee responsible for ISO 22000 is already working on the new version of the standard. The standard must undergo adaptations in some requirements in order to maintain its relevancy to the most modern practices of food safety management. Among the expected changes, the standards should adopt the new high-level structure, facilitating integration initiatives in organizations that follow more than one standard, such as ISO 9000 or ISO 14000. For the time being, we have the version published by ISO in 2005. The family is structured as follows. ISO 22000, Food Safety Management System. These are requirements for any organization in the food chain. This is the basis for food safety management system. ISO TS 22002-1, Prerequisite Program on Food Safety, Part 1, which is food manufacturing. ISO TS 22002, Part 3, this is a prerequisite program on food safety for farming. The abbreviation TS stands for Technical Standard, where some specific requirements are defined. There is some additional information detailing what food companies need to comply with in order to ensure proper hygiene throughout the production process in order to provide the market with safe products. To continue, we have ISO TS 22004. This is a food safety management system. This is guidance on the application of ISO 22000. This provides some guidelines for companies that are implementing ISO 22000. This standard was published in 2014. ISO TS 22003, Food Safety Management System, requirements for bodies providing audits and certification of food management systems. We also have 22003, which provides requirements for auditing and certification bodies of food safety management systems. This framework provides guidance for accreditation of ISO 22000, certifying entities, and provides the rules for conducting conformity assessment audits of food safety systems. Thus, that certifying entities must follow. ISO 22005. We also have ISO 22005, which deals with the general principles and basic requirements for planning and implementing the tracking system. It is also part of the ISO 22000 family of standards. Well, everyone, these are the main standards that make up the ISO 22000 family. Now, let's focus on ISO 22000 itself. The current version of ISO 22000 was published in 2005. According to the ISO schedule, the new version should be published in 2018. This standard establishes the requirements for a food safety management system, and companies that follow these guidelines are eligible for certification. It's important to stress that certification is voluntary and not mandatory. The standard guides organizations in the food production chain specifically in what they need to do to demonstrate their ability to control food safety risks and to ensure that the food is safe for consumption. The standard can be used by any company, regardless of its size or whether it operates directly or indirectly in the food sector. It's also important to clarify that ISO 22000 deals exclusively with aspects relating to food safety. Quality aspects, for example, are addressed in ISO 9000. Environmental aspects are addressed in ISO 14000, for example. There are a number of other ISO standards that deal with other specific aspects. ISO 22000 is designed around four fundamental elements for food safety. Interactive communication. In our day-to-day, communication is essential, and this also applies to food safety systems. It ensures that all relevant hazards are properly identified and controlled in each link in the food production chain. This includes communication between the organizations involved in the chain, as well as internal communications within the organization itself. Communicating with customers and suppliers about identified hazards and control measures helps one understand the requirements of customers and suppliers. System management. With regards to system management, when ISO 22000 was created, the technical committee was concerned to align the requirements with ISO 9001 in order to ensure compatibility between the two standards. In recent years, the structure of some ISO standards have been revised, such as ISO 9000, which has adopted the higher level structure. At this moment, ISO 22000 is also undergoing this process of modification in order to maintain this alignment with ISO 9001. Thus, the standard can also be applied in conjunction with ISO 9001, given its compatibility with it, as well as other management systems. Organizations can also integrate ISO 22000 with environmental management systems such as ISO 14000 or with work safety such as OSHA's 18000, since there are compatible requirements between these standards. The implementation of ISO 22000 integrated with requirements related to existing management system increases the system robustness and food safety. Prerequisite programs. HACCP principle. The HACCP prerequisite program and principles are two key elements that are part of the standard. HACCP principles are included in the standard in the form of requirements, which can be audited. This association with prerequisite programs enables companies to establish a highly effective management system. Hazard analysis is essential in the food management system. The combination of these two elements helps to establish control measures in a simpler way. Additionally, according to the standard, all hazards that may occur along the production chain must be identified and evaluated, including those associated with processes and installations. The standard provides the means to document and determine why certain hazards need to be controlled in one organization and not in others. In the course of hazard analysis, the organization will determine the strategy to be followed to ensure the adequate control of hazards. In regards to field of application, we have also already seen that this standard applies to all organizations involved in any aspect of the food chain, regardless of its size or complexity. Farmers, producers, food industry, transport companies, or retailers, all of them can implement food safety management systems based on ISO 22000. Organizations directly linked to the food chain, such as animal feed producers, primary producers, ingredient producers, cleaning and hygiene services, and transport companies, can also benefit from ISO 22000, as well as organizations that are indirectly involved in the food chain, such as equipment or packaging suppliers. The implementation of ISO 22000 offers companies a number of benefits. The following are just a few of them. Organizations that implement this standard can optimize their production process and prevent the occurrence of failures and deviations in general. This allows consumers to receive food products and consume them safely. When a customer receives a product that meets their expectations, they are satisfied and tend to increase their loyalty to the brand. Organizations that implement this standard become more demanding and go beyond just what the law requires. By complying to the requirements of the standard, it becomes easy to comply with legislations and regulatory resolutions related to food safety. The standard is adaptable to the entire food production chain and ensures greater productivity in the use of resources, as well as increasing the level of trust among partners in the food production chain, among other benefits. Finally, the organization attains international recognition, which facilitates the entry of its products in different markets. On this slide, we'll talk about each of the large group of requirements that make up the standard. Clauses 1 and 2 were already covered in the introduction slides. Clause 3 presents the vocabulary of the standard. These are the terms and definitions that apply to food safety management systems. In clauses 4 to 8, the standard describes the requirements, which are known as Auditable requirements. They are what an organization needs to comply with and to follow in order to have a food safety management system. When an audit is carried out, these are the requirements that will be audited. This slide provides an overview of the structure of ISO 22000. Here, the clauses are detailed and the auditable requirements of the standard are highlighted. The objective is not to go into detail of each requirement, but rather to give an overview of the main points of each clause. The general requirements of the food safety management systems are addressed in Clause 4. It states that the organization must have its requirements implemented and that it should also meet some documentation requirements. In accordance with this clause, the organization should establish, document, and implement an effective management system and update it whenever necessary in accordance with the requirements of the standard. The system should reflect all of the organization's activities and present up-to-date information, as well as maintain the necessary documents to show that the management system has been implemented effectively. Finally, Clause 4 addresses these points and the general conditions of the system and the issue of importance of documentation to provide evidence that the company has an effective food safety management system. Following this, we have Clause 5, which deals with management responsibilities. This clause highlights the responsibilities of the company's management with regards to the system. It is up to management to define and communicate the food safety policy, the planning of the system, define responsibilities and authorities for the management systems, prepare responses to emergency situations, and carry out the critical analysis of the system. In general, management should provide evidence of its commitment to the development, implementation, and improvement of the system. It should do this by demonstrating that there are defined goals for food safety, communicating to the organization the importance of meeting the requirements of the standard, legal requirements, as well as customer requirements. It is up to management to also define, implement, and communicate the food safety policy. Management is also responsible for the critical analysis and for periodically reviewing the food safety policy, thus improving the system on an ongoing basis. Finally, it is management's responsibility to ensure the availability of resources so that the system can operate effectively and be improved. Resource management is dealt with in Clause 6 of the standard. By resources, the standard considers everything from human resources and work environment to infrastructure resources. The production of safe food depends on all of them. The organization should provide adequate physical and human resources to implement, maintain, and update the system. It is essential to identify the skills required by collaborators. Those with gaps need to develop their skills, and those who already have the necessary skills can improve them. This way, everyone can carry out their duties and work in a standardized manner to promote food safety. To achieve this, the company should invest in employee training. Next, we have Clause 7, which deals with planning and production of food products. This clause includes the prerequisite program, in addition to most of the implementation stages of the HACCP methodology. We also have the preliminary stages and hazard analysis, the establishment of pre-operational requirement programs, and the establishment of HACCP plan. This clause then addresses the updating of preliminary data, which is extremely important for the production of safe foods. The standard then guides the planning of verification of compliance with the prerequisite programs and HACCP. Clause 7 also addresses the traceability and control of nonconformities. ISO 22000 suggests that organizations establish a tracking system that allows for the identification of product lots and their association to lots of raw materials, processing, and releasing records. In the event that a product under control is identified as a deviation from HACCP plan, the organization should proceed with addressing the deviation in accordance with the guidelines of the standard. Speaking of preliminary steps, Item 7.3 of the standard dictates that a food safety team should be appointed. In addition, raw materials, ingredients, and all raw materials that come into contact with the production should be described and documented. The organization should also identify the legal requirements related to the product, as well as prepare documentation describing the characteristics of the final product. Also, in line with Requirement 7.3, in the preliminary stages, the management system should describe, with documents, the intended use of the product, identify consumer groups, and prepare flowcharts to illustrate how products are processed. The food safety team should verify the accuracy of the flowcharts with on-site monitoring. Verified flowcharts should be kept as records. A brief description of the process steps and control measures associated with each step should also be made. Those who are already familiar with HACCP know that these are the initial steps for implementing the methodology. It's necessary to establish and document a system for data collection and subsequent risk analysis. This information is extremely important so that an adequate HACCP study can be carried out, and with it, to conduct risk analysis. This also enables you to define and establish the operational prerequisite programs, establish the HACCP plan, and conduct all compliance monitoring activities for the prerequisites and HACCP plan. The product tracking system mentioned above is extremely important. Should a food safety failure occur, it is possible to identify where the product came from or the origins of the inputs and materials used in its production. Clause 7 also identifies 7 principles of HACCP. As a reminder, they are: conduct a hazard analysis, identify the crucial control points, establish critical limits, monitor CCP, establish corrective action, verification, record keeping. This 7th principle is present in Section 4 of the standard, where we find the documentation requirements. Principle 6 is present in Section 8. The others are present in Clause 7. After product traceability has been identified and implemented, the standard also requires the definition and documentation of mechanisms to control products with nonconformities. When deviations occur at critical control points, there is the possibility of having potentially unsafe product, and this needs to be identified, evaluated, and controlled. If necessary, the product needs to be removed from the market. To do this, organizations need to have predefined processes and actions should any problem occur. It is also necessary to define actions to eliminate nonconformities and their causes should they occur. Clause 8 addresses validation, verification, and improvement of the food safety system. In addition to monitoring and measuring, the standard provides requirements for the validation of control measures. Clause 8 provides guidance on how companies should proceed with these situations. It is necessary to establish and document processes to validate the control measures that have been defined. They are essential for minimizing the occurrence of hazards. These validations must be performed prior to their implementation and after any changes to the systems are made. This clause also requires that the equipment used to measure and monitor the system be calibrated and verified to ensure that they do not become a source of deviations. Clause 8 also establishes the need to define an internal auditing process. This process should be documented, the auditors should be trained, and the organization should establish a schedule for conducting the audits. With the audits, it's possible to verify if the system is current and effective. The standard also recommends that when implementing processes, a food safety team be present to evaluate the results of all actions taken, as well as the results of the audits. This provides an overview of the effectiveness of the system. Finally, Clause 8 also addresses continuous improvement. It requires that the system be improved through communication, either internal or external, with customers or suppliers, via critical analysis, audits, verifications or validation of control measures, corrective actions, or system updates. All of these points are important because they can help improve the system and ensure the safer products reach consumers. To assist the organization seeking to implement a food safety management system, SoftExpert has developed a technological solution that automates all aspects required by ISO 22000. SC Food Safety is a software that provides a complete management solution for food safety, simplifying compliance with requirements and accelerating the implementation of the standard. It identifies, analyzes, and controls biological, chemical, and physical hazards in each stage of food production, including raw material acquisition and handling, manufacturing, and distribution until the product reaches the final consumer. The solution classifies hazards into categories including biological, physical, chemical, and allergenic ones. Thus, it helps to create a robust and unique hazard base. It supports the creation of HACCP flowcharts in a simple and quick manner with process modeling tools. SC Food Safety provides a robust and specific hazard identification, followed by flexible methods for risk assessment. It relates each hazard to an appropriate preventative control and assesses its effectiveness. The software helps to plan, distribute, and manage compliance studies and self-assessment tests of controls and procedures. It enables the determination of critical control points for significant hazards using intelligent and automated decision trees. The system helps establish, monitor, and control prerequisite programs, or PRP, and its general procedures such as standard operating procedures, or SOPs, for hygiene and good manufacturing practices, or GMPs. It supports the management and review of HACCP plans, providing the most up-to-date information available. Well, everyone, we've come to the end of this webinar. I hope that in this brief presentation, I've been able to highlight the main points of ISO 22000 and how it can benefit food safety management systems. If you have any questions or would like to know more about SoftExpert solutions for the food industry, please contact us. Thank you very much for your attention.